Yeah. 20,000 square feet? It's gonna take a few hours. Oh, hold on, I'll call you right back. Hey! Didn't know you were coming today. But since you are here, let me introduce myself. I'm Rich with Rich Baum Photography, Sacramento, California. And we're doing some tips and tricks and tutorials. And this is our premiere, our first live video tutorial, because I've had so many people say that they wanted to see it behind the scenes. And this is perfect because I got a place to shoot, I got ceiling fans to work with, I've got windows and shutters for the darken mode, we've got cameras, we got lights, we've got couches. So listen, sit back, we're gonna do a short little tutorial for this premiere, this first time out, looking for your feedback and hope this moves into something that is a really good thing. We're gonna deal with tips and tricks for photography and editing. And the whole basis of what I believe in is to, as you're shooting, you wanna be thinking about your editing and you wanna know what you're doing to get the right shots. I call that my ammunition in your bag of tricks, and then you can get home and you have all the shots you need. Please sit back, enjoy, and hopefully you'll learn something and you'll have a good time and you can use it tomorrow on your next shoot. Right now, I'm just gonna go over the shots. We've got three things we wanna get in this. We wanna get an ambient shot for the room. We could do a bracket of 2 or 3 exposures, which I recommend. So you get home and you've got various things to work with. We might need a different exposure for a room down the hall, whatever we need, we've got. Then we're gonna get a lit shot, a lit frame with our lights, and we're just going to expose for the window. But what else we can do is we can do what's called a window pull, which is gonna be a window exposure which we can mask in, but it's much more difficult to mask in when you've got shutters like that, because you would actually have to select each shutter. So what we're going to do is called darken mode. So let's start off with the ambient shot. Now we've got our composition, and I want to now, I'm set up to ISO 320. We're doing f8, and I'm going to set up the ambient exposure. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to do an even brighter shot. So I'm going to go down to 1 1/3 seconds. So I'm going to do this again. And I'm on a tripod so I can go quite slow. I don't have to worry about movement. And I'm not moving my feet. So sometimes you got to be careful. The floor may move, the carpet may move, and you got to line up all these shots. So you go here and I'm going to do a little bit faster, a little darker. So I'm going to be able to use this ambient shot for shadows. And I'll show you later how we're going to use that to our advantage. Okay, so I've got 3 bracketed shots. And if you're doing HDR and you're coming from HDR, you know how I feel about HDR. But I will say, go ahead and do a full bracket like you're going to do an HDR shot. If you get home and the photo didn't turn out as well as you'd like and you have to fall back on your HDR, by all means, fall back on your HDR, okay? So now, I'm going to put this up here and I'm going to take my Yongnuo 563 and I'm going to point it straight up at the ceiling, and I can see here, one of the keys to where you want to put your light is, I could put it back here, and I could do it down at camera level. Let's say you had an on-camera flash. You don't want to do that because the flash has to travel up to the ceiling to bounce off. And when I shoot, I'm only bouncing straight up. I don't bounce backwards. I don't bounce forward. I tend to not use umbrellas. I bounce straight up and use the light. It becomes a nice soft light. And what I do here is I hold it out. So what I'm going to do is I can see my frame goes to about here. Then now this is where I start seeing the ceiling. So I've got all this area to bounce. And if I get my flash about 12 to 18 inches below the ceiling, it's going to make about a 24-inch circle of light, nice soft light. That's why I bounce straight up. I don't use diffusers. I don't use Gary Fong dongs. I don't use umbrella, well, sometimes I use umbrellas, but I just like to bounce straight up and it works for me. You can try whatever you want, whatever works. Now, the other thing too about pointing straight up is if you're pointing forward like if I lit it from here, I'm just gonna shoot this for you. I'm just gonna go half power, and I'm going to be at a quarter of a second, and it's kind of dark in here anyway, so I'm definitely dark enough for this. If I pointed my flash forward, and I gotta turn on the transmitter. If I point forward, if you point forward, it's going to cause a ceiling fan shadow, okay? So you can see right here that that's not working. Now, let me do another one. Let me even bounce it slightly forward back here, okay? Gonna do it again. And I want you to check it out, even just slightly forward. Let's see how this looks. We still have the ceiling fan shadow. So, if I am here, and I've got full power, and actually I might use 2 flashes, but right now I'm going to go down just a little fast, a little slower shutter speed, get a little more light. If I get this little bit of white on the ceiling, I can utilize whatever I can get. And I'm just going to bounce it straight up, and I'm going to bring it down about 18 inches below the ceiling, straight up. And I've got this, and I don't see a shadow here. This is the one before. You can see the shadow there. And this is a straight light. You get the shadow there. So if you go straight up, you're not going to get much of a shadow. And if you do, we can always mask it out with the ambient shot, which I'll show you in the computer. So now, I figure I'm going to need a little more power. So what I'm going to do right now for this room, I'm going to set up a second Yongnuo. And because I've only got 2 hands, one of my hands is on my iPad, I'm going to just set this up. Actually, I'm going to use this in my hand. I'm going to set this one up right here. And I'm going to go right here. I'm just going to get a little bit of light going up. Full power. So I'm going to do both of these at full power. This is actually a pretty dark room. Normally I wouldn't need so much. But okay, I've got full power here. Great. And I'm going to increase my shutter speed a little bit to give it a little more crispness, a little less ambient. So I'm going to go up to a 15th of a second. So I'm going to bounce it straight up. I've got this light, and I've got this light, both at full power. So here we go. Okay, let's see how this looks. So this is actually going to be fine for what I need. It's got nice crisp around the couch. It's got not much of a ceiling. You've got a little bit of a ceiling fan shadow, but I can fix that, no worries. I'm not going to worry about the window because we're going to do a window pull. So I've got this going on. Now, if I wanted to, I could turn on my street light 360, make sure my trigger's on, and I'm going to put this on full power. Let's see what we get here with this one, and a handheld one. Okay? Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3. So this was 3 lights, but you know what? We really don't need 3 lights in here. But it is nice and crisp, and when you see it in the computer, I'll show you what we're going to do with it. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of things, and we've gotten the ambient shot, and we've gotten the lit shot, the exposures, and then what we want to do now is we want to expose for the window. Many ways to do that. One is you can expose it the way you want, which would be darker, and then you can kind of just select it and mask it in or freehand paint it in Photoshop. But what we're going to do is what I call the darken mode, and it was a term from a friend of mine, and it's a way of doing it that we are going to expose for the window, which will be darker than the layer that it's on top of, and then we're going to overexpose everything here that is in front of the window, which would be the lamp here, which would be these shutters right here, and then would be this stick right here, the frame, the wall, right here. And then we can just, if it's done properly, we can just paint it in, and I'll show you that. Now, if we had a wall of windows, we might need to do several of these shots. So let me show you how we do that. And I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'll drop a couple of these drapes so we can see it and see how it affects. And in the computer, you'll see how great it is. It's a life changer. Well, maybe not a life changer, but it certainly makes your life a little bit easier. The theory is that you expose for the view. And I personally don't have any lights behind because I don't want this wall being bright where you're going to see it in the reflection possibly of the window. So all I need is a single speed light, and I may need to do 1, 2, or 3 pops depending. Sometimes we have a wall of lights, of windows, so we have to do independent. And here's the whole theory. If you expose for the dark view, which is going to be darker than the layer you're putting it on, and you'll know this when we do this tutorial on the computer. And then if you overexpose the shutters, the wall, if I have this lamp here, I expose this, overexpose this. Once you put it into darken mode, it will not, when you mask it in, it will not pick up anything that's brighter. So the goal is to, anything in front of the camera, and I'll show you in a second, you want to make sure it's brighter. Okay, so let's try this. Looking right here, what do we have in front of the window? Well, we obviously have the shutters, so we have to overexpose that. We've got the window frame. We've got a little bit of a pillow there, but that's not a big deal. But we have the lamp, so we got to make sure the lamp is overexposed. We want to make sure that we get this exposed because this is in front of the window view. Anyway, so let's do this. I'm going to show you all where I put my light. Now this is kind of a trial and error thing, and it can be different for every single shot. And actually, I don't even need to have it on a stand. I'm just going to take my light, and I'm going to put it on half power. Okay? And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to expose for the view. So I'm going to say this is probably about 40th of a second. Let me go 60th of a second. Okay, so we got a 60th of a second, and this could be anywhere from 40th, a 20th, 40th, 60th, 200th of a second, and you could reach your max sync speed. Let me tell you a little bit about this. If you hit your max sync speed and you still need more darker exposure, you can lower your ISO. So when we blend and match images, you can't change your aperture, but you can change your shutter speed and you can change your ISO to adjust for the lighting scenario. So what we want to do right now though is I'm going to keep it at 320 ISO, which I'm keeping for the whole series of shots. I'm going to go 1/160th of a second, and I'm still at f8. And make sure you don't bump your tripod, because if it moves, you want everything to line up, because we're going to use all these shots. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to point this from the direction of the camera, which is way I normally do it. So I've got my power on half power at 1/60th of a second, and let's see how this goes. We have, let me show you the frame below it. This is going to be, you got to just make sure that, look at this wall, and I can do this on the computer at home, but this is brighter. So I'm going to even make sure it's brighter. I'm going to go a little bit brighter with the flash. I want to guarantee that everything I see in front of the window is brighter, okay? So let's raise this up to 1 power, okay, ready to go, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, now it's definitely brighter, and the view is darker. You can see how I'm not going to have to mask out each of these little slats right here. This is going to be taken care of with the darken mode, so that's why we do it. And we don't have to worry about anything else, any shadows or anything else. We're not using any part but the window view. Okay? So we're going to do that in the computer, and I'm going to show you how that works. We've got our ambient shots, we've got our lit shots, and we've got our window pull. So let's see how this all gets taken care of in the computer.